Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 254 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing chapter 28 of A Feast for Crows. That's Cersei 6.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, unless, of course, you have the Buy Me a Coffee tier that includes spoilers. Then we will spoil things for you. Regardless, we will hopefully provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing all right. I had a big decision to make today, and I think it affected my sleep because I woke up having a dream somewhat related to it, and then I couldn't get back to sleep this morning. So I every now and then I tend to be struggle a little bit with indecision, shall we say?
I actually don't think that, Mackelly.
Really?
I don't think you're any different than the rest of us in terms of that.
Well, that's good. Tell that to Stacey. She tends to disagree. Personally, I chalk it up to having been married for a quarter of a century and mostly just going along with whatever she says. I get out of practice making decisions.
That is a good point, actually, because I have completely abdicated all decision making. Like we're gonna go on vacation, and Carson was like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "The things you want to do."
Exactly. Why don't you just tell me what I want to do?
and I mean, and I'm not just being lazy and uninterested. I genuinely want to do the things she wants to do. They'll make her happy, and that'll make me happy, and everyone will be happy,
Exactly, yeah. I feel very much the same way. And especially the decision that I had to make today, rarely am I ever consulted, and rarely do I ever have an opinion on... So my birthday's coming up in a few weeks, and every month my manager does a team lunch, and the people whose birthdays fall in that month, he pays for their lunch and they get to pick the venue. Well, I'm the only person born in September on my team, and so it fell to me to make the venue choice, and I kind of panicked. I had like a week, and I was like, oh, this is too much. I'm going to put this off. And then now the lunch is tomorrow. And so this morning he was like, so where are we going? And I was like, I don't know.
I hear you. And also, can I please recant my previous statement about you not being indecisive? Oh my God, you're a disaster area. How could you not have made that decision? It just doesn't matter.
Well, that was the thing. I just wanted someone to tell me where we were going. I didn't want to have to pick.
I wouldn't either. So my group, my manager, he does the same thing for his group. There's only like 6 of us, and I am one of 3 people in April, and the other 2 are ladies. So I just say, wherever you want.
Right.
You choose. I never have any say in that.
That's how it used to be. And then the 2 other September people left the team. So it's just me. And I've never had to make this decision before. So, but I made it. I made it not so confidently. I gave him 3 choices, and he said, really, just pick one. So I picked one. And then we had to reschedule because half the team can't make it due to illness. So...
Well, that is a window into your soul. That is really quite bad, Mackelly. I could have done that. I wouldn't have made a good choice.
Well, here's the problem.
I would have knee-jerked just like the first thing that came to my head. But that's good.
Yes. My first choice was the place across the street from where we were.
And that's where I would have chosen too.
Yes. And I was like, no, everybody goes there. I should pick something better, but I didn't want to pick something too far away from campus. I didn't want to pick something too far away from me, so it became a whole mess. And so here's the biggest problem is that I really don't care where I'm eating. It was tough. Yeah. It was a tough decision, but I survived and I made it.
So when's it going to happen now?
I don't know. It's going to be rescheduled probably next week, I guess, which is creeping closer toward my birthday. So,
Yeah. I have written down since we started this call, Mackelly birthday September.
You just had to figure out the day now.
I'm wheedling it out of you slowly but surely. So I have a story for you, which I think it's one of those kind of maybe you had to be there, but it kind of cracked me up, so I'm going to share it with you. So
All right.
my friend Tim is getting back into Dungeons and Dragons, and as part of that, he's actually buying the figurines and painting them. Okay.
All right.
So
yeah.
he told us all this in the presence of his wife Ali, but later on in the day, Ali, Tim was talking about it again. He was saying he was in the local game store, Game Theory, and he was buying the paints for his figurine painting. And she said, "Why were you in Game Theory buying paints for your figurine painting?" And he's like, "Well, because that's where you buy the paints for your figurine painting." And she's like, "But why would you buy them in a game store?" And it
As opposed to like a hardware store or something, right?
Because it came to light that she had no idea what type of figurines he was painting. She, in her imagination, thought he was painting plaster figurines.
Oh, like big, large figurines?
Not for Dungeons and Dragons, but like maybe as ornaments for the garden or something. I don't know. This cracked us all up, and we were sort of teasing her about her misunderstanding. You're like, you live with the man. Does it seem like that's the kind of thing he would do? And
5 foot tall plaster figurines in the yard.
And she said, well, I mean, it didn't seem that implausible. She said, when I was a kid in summer camps, they used to have us paint figurines. And there was something about the way she said it that just made her summer camp sound like the most joyless, Calvinistic camp child labor or something, you know. And so we're all riffing on this. Like, did you have a quota every day that you had to get through? She was so mad at us. That's why I'm telling it, because she was so angry.
Well, I never went to any summer camp, so I can't really.
I've never been to a summer camp, and I never sent my kid to a summer camp either.
Yeah, me either.
It seemed I mean, day camps, but nothing overnight. It feels like in England, sort of like the upper classes send their children to boarding school, and that just seems like torture. It seems like that's how you end up with a ruling class who are so twisted and freakish, is because they were rent from their family at a young age and put into a sort of like a cauldron of bullying.
Well, hopefully she wasn't in a cauldron of bullying. Because
it sounded like she might have been, honestly. It didn't sound good at all.
Uh-oh. Speaking of bullying.
Go on.
We have a Cersei chapter here. That was what I meant.
Chief bully of the entire book, yes.
Right.
Let us indeed get down to business. How did we leave Cersei Lannister? Last we saw of Cersei, she was dealing with a calendar full of back-to-back meetings, as well as a rebellious little king. She rejected the ideas of Tommen sitting the Iron Throne, sitting in on small council meetings, and training with Dolores. She commiserated with the merchants about this influx of sparrows to the city. She got the good news that Sir Davos's missing fingertips are no longer his most notable loss. Yep. She held her ground with the envoy from the Iron Bank, no payments until the war ends. She was given the news that Sir Osney Kettleblack's attempts to bed Margaery are progressing slowly, and finally she convinced Sir Balman and Felice Birch to kill Sir Bronn. I'd forgotten that one. That's not going to go well. That just isn't going to go well. Anyway, Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one, which I'll mention. Those two are not mentioned in this. That's why I was able to forget about those guys and not remember it until I just read that.
Right.
It would be remiss of me if they were also mentioned in this chapter, but they're not.
They are not. So Queen Cersei's litter makes a ponderous climb up Visenya's hill. The going is slow due to the infestation of sparrows around the Great Sept of Baelor. Cersei can hear Osmond Kettleblack shouting for them to make way for the queen. Meanwhile, inside, Taena Maryweather tells Cersei about the lively court Margaery Tyrell keeps, complete with jugglers and mummers, but above all, singers, especially Margaery's favorite, the Blue Bard. Cersei considers that last detail a promising avenue to follow.
She asks Taena about the other men and questions whether Taena thinks Margaery is still a maiden. Taena says Margaery insists that she and Renly never consummated their marriage as her groom drank too much wine. But Taena stripped Renly herself, and she can attest that he appeared up to the task when they put him on the bed with a naked Margaery. It was Sir Loras who carried his newlywed sister up to the bedding that night. Cersei respects that.
I bet she would.
Mm-hmm.
As for the men at court, the list is long and includes many young, handsome knights, but it ends with Grand Maester Pycelle.
Not one of them.
No, that strikes Cersei as odd, as well as strikes us as odd, I believe. She and the elderly Maester have been butting heads lately, but if he's changed his allegiances to the Roads, he will soon regret it. But the most ever-present figure around Margaery is Sir Loras, of course. The fact spurs a wicked thought for Taena, but Cersei says she better keep it to herself. The sparrows don't care for wickedness.
Taena thinks the High Septon should have come to Cersei at the Red Keep. Cersei agrees, but she needs his blessing for Tommen. She knows it's an empty ritual, but even Aegon the Conqueror set the start of his rule of Westeros by the High Septon's blessing. It's important in the eyes of the ignorant.
Taena thinks the High Septon is waiting for the gold. Cersei insists he'll get it at war's end. Septon's Reynard and Tolbert understood her situation. The Bravasi banker was another story. He harassed Giles Rosby so much that Rosby became bedridden from the stress. But it'll all be worth it when her new ships take sail. She can't count on the Red Wine fleet. They're too close to the Tyrells.
The litter comes to a halt again. Outside her window, Sir Osmond rides next to his brother Osfrid, who wears his new gold cloak. Grand Maester Pycelle wanted a more seasoned man to lead the gold cloaks, but Cersei thought otherwise. Osfrid will summon more gold cloaks to clear out the sparrows, but Cersei says there's no time. She will walk.
Ahead of her is the statue of King Baelor. Bones of the dead are stacked up around it waist high. A ragged man explains that they are the bones of murdered holy men and women from around the realm. Cersei announces that this was the work of the Northmen and Stannis' Red Witch, and that their dead will be avenged. However, they really don't care about that. They only ask for protection for the living and the holy places.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
At the door of the Sept, men bar the entrance. No weapons are allowed by command of the High Septon. Cersei goes on alone, leaving her Kingsguard outside. Inside, Septons are everywhere, but not in prayer. They are cleaning on hands and knees. She is shocked to recognize the face of her friend Septon Reynard cleaning. The High Septon says that cleaning is a form of prayer. Cersei reprimands the small man, saying he should have greeted her on the steps in his finest robes and a crystal crown on his head. The man responds that they sold the crown along with all the other jewels and fine robes.
Cersei thinks of how Septon Lucion had nearly won the votes necessary to be named High Septon, when the sparrows broke down the doors of the Sept with this man on their shoulders and axes in their hands. She asks to speak privately, and he leads her to the statue of the crone, and they kneel in prayer.
The Queen wants these sparrows out of King's Landing. They befoul the plaza. The High Septon points out that they have nowhere to go, and that this plaza was befouled by the execution that was performed there. Ned Stark, for those who've forgotten. These people's villages and homes were destroyed in the war. Septs, Septons, Scepters, and innocent women and children have been ravaged. Again, Cersei blames Northmen and Stannis, but the High Septon mentions lions and the Hound too. Where was the king when these atrocities were being committed? It's the crown's job to protect the faith.
Cersei asks when he plans to bless Tommen. When the time is ripe. The realm is full of kings at the present. He must be certain he is blessing the right one. He will pray on it. Cersei says that if he blesses Tommen, the king will put a stop to these atrocities. The High Septon is dubious. Will a knight escort every begging brother in the realm? Cersei points out that the sparrows have weapons. Use them.
The High Septon says that goes against King Maegor's law. The Faith is forbidden to carry weapons. She offers to undo the law if he will bless Tommen. When the High Septon says it will be an answer to 300 years of prayer, the Queen adds that he might also forgive the nearly 1 million gold dragons the crown owes the Faith. The man agrees.
And Cersei is on cloud 9. She did what her father could never have done. She secured the Faith's backing of Tommen, rid the city of the plague of sparrows, weakened their enemies, and wiped out 1 million gold dragons of debt in one single move.
Her festive mood is short-lived. On the ride back to the Red Keep, as the litter starts up Egan's High Hill, they come across Margaery and her entourage returning from the King's Wood. The little queen is always running about somewhere, rubbing shoulders with commoners, giving to beggars, talking with tradesmen, spreading her spending around to various vendors. As if that was not bad enough, Tommen was constantly begging her to let him go with Margaery.
What a monster. Margaery rides alongside the litter and tells the queen she should let Margaery help with some of the ruling tasks. It would put to rest the idea that they are rivals for the king. Cersei says she's never considered Margaery a rival in any way. Cersei looks at Loras riding next to his sister. She thinks of Jaime, then thinks of Taena's unspoken wicked thought, and a laugh bursts forth. Margaery asks to share in the jest. "Oh, you will. I promise," she says.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That sounds like a threat.
Yes. And I think we smell what the threat is. I mean, Taena's wicked thing was that somehow Margaery is in an incestuous relationship with Loras.
Yes.
And Cersei thinking of Jaime just before she laughs about Taena's wicked thought sort of reconfirms that. So that appears to be where she's going. I'll say this a few times before the end of this episode, but Cersei might want to be careful about casting that aspersion.
Throwing that particular stone might not be the one she wants to lift first.
And I thought about it, and I thought to myself, well, maybe she thinks nobody knows or nobody suspects outside of the Red Keep, say. But then I remembered that Stannis told everybody in all 7 kingdoms. Right. Everybody knows. There's nobody who doesn't know.
And if you start spreading the rumor that the queen is in an incestuous relationship with her brother, it's not that much of a leap from that queen is in an incestuous relationship with her brother to those queens are in incestuous relationships with their brothers.
Right. One of these queens' brothers is thought to be gay by many people in the kingdom, so that's way less likely. Cersei, on the other hand, her children look like her twin brother.
Yes, exactly.
Way more evidence.
Right, yes. And there's a letter going around about her, so,
But I will say, this whole chapter provides a side to Cersei that we don't normally see. She's clearly very fond of Taena Maryweather and laughs and kisses her at various points, even indulging her in chat that I think Cersei wouldn't tolerate from most people. There's a couple of times Taena says things that, as I read, I was like, oh, you've gone too far this time. But Cersei just rolls with it, which is really strange.
You read it and you flinch.
Yeah,
You're ready for the slap, but wait, there was no slap. Yeah, it does seem that she's getting very close to Cersei, climbing the social ladder rather high by basically becoming the queen's BFF.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, my thought about this is always that, is Jaime's thought that she just doesn't know who this woman is, and she's done no background check on her. And at the end of the chapter, when they're in conversation with Margaery, Taena's in the litter with Cersei. Margaery must know this. Margaery must know how tight they are. And Margaery also knows that Taena's constantly around her, asking questions, taking notes on who's hanging around Margaery. It's like, if Taena isn't actively working with Margaery, then Margaery's smart enough to subvert the spying that is going on by Taena.
Yes, you would
because she
think.
knows that's why Taena's there.
Yeah, it's a tangled web because Taena was originally one of Margaery's ladies in waiting, turned Cersei's lady in waiting, and Cersei told Jaime that she knows Taena is spying for Margaery, and so she feeds Taena the information she wants Margaery to know. So, but why wouldn't she assume that it's the same thing is happening in the other direction?
Right, right. Well, and I thought about that a little bit, and actually I came to the conclusion that was because what she's feeding Cersei is exactly what Cersei wants to hear, up to a certain point. We don't know for a fact that what she's reporting, Taena may be making stuff up, or she may be reporting what Margaery is feeding her. She may be faithfully reporting that, trying to help Cersei. But if she were secretly an agent of the Tyrells, her information sharing would be almost identical. She couldn't share any less than she's sharing.
Right.
And there's nothing that would stand up in court that she's sharing.
No, not thus far.
Right. But there is a lot of smoke. And Cersei is the kind of person to yell fire at the top of her lungs if she smells enough smoke. And that's what I think could well happen here.
No, you're absolutely right. That's the issue here. And Cersei just doesn't seem to really concern about anyone's backstory. The Kettle Blacks, Taena, they have all come out of basically nowhere and become fixtures in her life. And she doesn't seem to put any stock in why what were they before they became her constant conspirators and companions.
She is sensing there's a lot of what I'm calling smoke, sort of like reasons to suspect that there is something going on with Margaery. But she's being fed this by Taena and possibly Margaery as well. Then are they trying to lure her into an error? Are they trying to get her to make an accusation which they can in some way prove false?
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. If Margaery is of that mind, Olenna, her grandmother, might be thinking something along those lines. I'm not sure if Margaery is wired that way or not, but it certainly could, the way things are going so far.
Yeah.
But, as you were saying, Taena and Cersei are getting really chummy. And Cersei even suggests that Taena bring her son Russell from Longtable, the seat of House Maryweather, to King's Landing to befriend Tommen. And, she thinks it's a good idea for Tommen to have friends. And I think she's right. If you look at some of the crown princes that we've seen in this story, Rhaegar had friends.
Uh-huh.
He was he was melancholy and moody, but fairly well adjusted, for all intents and purposes.
A rounded character, yeah.
Yes. Joffrey, she mentions in this chapter, no friends. Just the Hound, not really the same thing as a friend. If you're gonna model your new heir after one of those two, surround him with friends. And she thinks of actually Ned and Robert and kind of wishes and hopes for a same kind of friendship between Tommen and this Russell. And, it's kind of, despite how much she disparaged that relationship between Ned and Robert, turns out she actually thought kind of highly of it.
Envied it in many ways, yeah.
Yeah. But all that said, regarding Taena and her friendship with Cersei, I can't help but think of Cersei's only other friend that we've ever met that she mentions in this chapter, Melara Heatherspoon, and her fate, dying at the bottom of a well. Yes. And, there's a lot of theories that Cersei may have pushed her into the well because the question that Melara asked Maggie the Frog was, will I marry Jaime? So, there's not a lot of great precedent for long-term success of being Cersei's friend, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. And back to Margaery for a second. It is possible that every scintilla of suspicion that Cersei has is true. That she is a complete harlot who sleeps with all of these guys who come trotting through her court every day. It's crazy, but it's not absolutely impossible. It feels to me, though, that Margaery is too canny of an operator to give up her maidenhood to anyone other than Tommen.
It would be very risky, for sure.
Exactly. And I think she's got enough of a Lena in her to resist the charms of the Kettle Blacks. And however, none of that is necessarily enough to stop Cersei from continuing with her plan anyway.
No.
Margaery's fidelity is neither here nor there.
No, it doesn't factor into her plans. And before we move on away from Margaery and her court, Mark Mullendor comes up. And we actually know of Mark Mullendor through Brienne. He was one of the men who was part of the game to bed Brienne at Highgarden. And Hyle Hunt told Brienne when he was kind of catching her up on what some of those people are up to, that he lost his arm in the Battle of the Blackwater. He was the one that had the monkey. That's why Taena said that they were trying to find him a monkey. Because he previously had a monkey. I guess that monkey didn't survive the battle.
Maybe it was on the arm that...
Maybe. Have you seen that chimp show that's on Netflix? Maybe the monkey ripped the arm off.
Yeah.
Maybe it was never made it to the battle.
I haven't watched it, but I mean, that is a crazy thing to do, because when a chimpanzee gets angry...
Oh, yeah.
You're not going to win that fight.
I've not watched it.
Yeah.
Stacy's watching it. I haven't watched it yet, but she's been telling me the stories. Those chimpanzees are powerful, and they're wild animals. You know,
right.
I mean,
they are smart wild animals with tempers. It's not a good
and
combination.
Strength.
Yeah.
But
the other thing we're talking about Cersei and Taena. The other, as you mentioned, the Kettlebacks are the other people who fall into this group of trusted confidants who she doesn't know their provenance. And just to remind you of where they all stand now, Osmond is a member of the Kingsguard and would have been acting Lord Commander of the Kingsguard had Cersei had her way, had Jaime not resisted.
Yeah, I was just going to say that was never decided. We never heard a decision.
Yeah, we don't know, but Jaime was pretty adamant before he left. Of course,
right.
that decision could be changed behind his back for all Jaime would know.
Exactly.
Then Osfrid is now commander of the City Watch, the Gold Cloaks, and Osney is entrusted with Cersei's most sensitive plot, that of deflowering Margaery Tyrell to Margaery's ruin. So that's a lot of power and a lot of responsibility and a lot of Cersei's deepest, darkest secrets tied up in three guys who we happen to know are on Peter Baelish's payroll.
Yes, exactly.
Maybe they've turned, but I don't think so. I have a feeling that Peter Baelish inspires more loyalty than most people in this book.
He seems to. He's good at it. That's one of his strong suits.
Because he's good at it. Because he pays and he is ruthless.
Right.
That Cersei is too random. And
he thinks ahead. He plans.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, we discussed this in spoilers, but a few Cersei chapters back, she had thought about making Sir Osfrid Kettleblack, kind of changing him out with Sir Osney in the Margaery Tyrell bedding, Jon Snow murdering plot.
Yeah.
But she thought to herself that she had another job for him, which is why she didn't put up a fight when Jaime wanted Adam Marbrand to come with him.
That was the job. Right.
Yes.
Yep.
But again, we see Pycelle sees flaws in this plan to promote this unproven person to leadership, just like he did when Aurane Waters wanted to put young ship captains in these new ships that she's having built. He said, no, we need seasoned, trusted, loyal men. And here he thinks, no, we need someone who's more seasoned than this young Osfrid. So just another example.
Yeah. So for Cersei, it's another example of her advisors trying to thwart her. But for us, it's more another example of Cersei making bad decisions. But Pycelle, it's very odd that he showed up in a list of regular visitors to Margaery.
Yes, it is.
It's made me think carefully about how I think about Pycelle, because I've always perceived Pycelle, and maybe the TV show influences me here, maybe I'm just biased, but I've always perceived him as a complete craven sellout. And weirdly, by contrast, I've always seen Varys as a noble defender of the realm against threats foreign and domestic.
Yeah.
But I don't know if either of those positions are truly right. We know Pycelle was on Tywin's pay. He was Tywin's man.
That's how I think of him. Yeah, I think of him as a Tywin's man / loyal Lannister loyalist. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Yes.
But maybe we've been a bit too hasty there. Could he have seen what Cersei's doing and decided to work with the Tyrells to work around Cersei or to usurp Cersei because she is a threat to the realm? If it was Varys, that's exactly what I would think. That's precisely what I was thinking. But because it's Grand Maester Pycelle, I'm like, he's probably just, I don't know, he's probably just trying to shut Margaery himself.
Well, yeah, it is. It's just he doesn't fit with the rest of that group. Like,
No.
You could see the rest are all like young, handsome knights that are teaching the women how to fight with poles and stuff and all these kind of young people things. I just can't picture Grand Maester Pycelle like rolling with that crew. Teach me how to fight with this staff, and
I'll get you a monkey.
He just doesn't fit in. So the question is, why is he there? Okay, first of all, the question is Taena telling the truth or not?
True.
If she's telling the truth, why is he hanging around with Margaery Tyrell and her young crew of knights and ladies?
I've had a thought as you asked that question. Given that Margaery is sleeping with everybody in court, it's probably the tansy tea she needs once a month.
That could be. Certainly, yeah.
I'm joking.
If that were the case, yeah. If that were the case, because like I said earlier, it's really dangerous for her to be doing that because of how young Tommen is. There's no pretending, there's no Cersei and Robert situation where you pretend that the child is Tommen's. He's way too young, so if she is with child, that is really bad. But no, like you were saying, they've been butting heads a lot, Cersei and Grand Maester Pycelle. So maybe he is seeing that she is really mismanaging this whole situation. And with Tywin dead, maybe he doesn't feel that sense of loyalty to the Lannisters that he once did. Yeah.
And of course, he's probably susceptible to a bribe. Going back to my original thinking about Pycelle, and maybe the Tyrells have bribed him to switch sides,
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes. Yeah, and of course if she's lying, she's doing so possibly to sow more discord between Cersei and one of the true Lannister loyalists.
Right. But that's very dangerous, though. That's very dangerous because Cersei might confront Pycelle over that. And if that's not true, then suddenly Taena's whole story becomes, so...
That's true.
I would be very careful not to make stuff up like that.
Yeah. Make up something that can be vetted. Right.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Disproven quite easily. You feel like Cersei might have had a hand in the previous High Septon's death, but help me out here because it felt like the last High Septon was dying or dead for a long. I lose track. You know how I lose track.
Well, there has been several. The one High Septon got pulled off his horse in the riot.
I remember that one. Yeah,
and then she believes that Tyrion handpicked the next High Septon, and it's just the wording of some of the things she says. She's thinking about, and they're kind of, she and Taena are kind of discussing how this current High Septon was born with dirt under his fingernails, and how even Taena's son would be a better choice than this guy. And she thinks, next time I'll pick the High Septon for them, and it won't be too long from now if he continues to annoy me. And then the description says that Baelor's hand had little to teach Cersei Lannister where such matters are concerned. Because remember, she was telling that story about how Baelor had a stonemason elevated to High Septon and that his hand had him killed, so it wouldn't cause the realm embarrassment.
Right.
So it's just some of the wording makes you think that maybe she was involved in some way.
Right.
No, nothing outwardly said. It's just kind of the wording is suspect.
And so she was maneuvering to get one of her two chosens to become the new High Septon, but then it seems like the Sparrows basically marched in and appointed their chief as the new High Septon.
Yes, right. Mm-hmm. That's what she was told, is that they came in with axes and kind of coerced the most devout.
Yes, yes.
But poor Giles Rosby, he's become bedridden due to the stress. Due to stress from the Iron Bank payments. So it seems that Cersei has kicked Noho Dimitis back over to Giles after their discussion.
It does seem that way, and he doesn't take no-ho for an answer.
There you go. There it was. You knew it was out there somewhere. The money they're saving from not paying the Faith and now having that debt wiped out and not paying the Iron Bank is going toward these new ships.
Right. And this is where I think this is Cersei's biggest single problem, is that she is treating... The Tyrells are not her enemies. Yes.
They're not supposed to be.
They are overreaching, perhaps, and they are trying to get too much power at court. Fine, I get it. But they're not the enemies. You've got Starks, maybe. You've got Arryns. You've got Martells.
Stannis.
You've got Stannis Baratheon. You don't even know it yet, but you've got Daenerys Targaryen. You've got real enemies. You should not be building a fleet because the existing fleet you have is too close to the Tyrells. That's crazy, because the existing fleet is the Red Wines, and the Red Wines are bannermen to the Tyrells. That suggests that the whole reason for all this expenditure, which, like you said, could have been used to pay off the debts to the Iron Bank, is being spent simply to counterbalance the Tyrells. It's daft.
Yeah. Now, some of her insistence that they're enemies stems from that old gold coin that Qyburn found in Rugen's chamber.
But she's so credulous when it comes to things like that. You know, I mean, so there you go. There's an old coin that might be a Tyrell coin in the cell of the jailer. It could have been planted there.
Yes, right. Definitely could have.
Tyrion didn't poison Joffrey. It's clear. You just hate him and you've blinded yourself to the truth.
Yeah, so much of it, like you said, is manufactured in her head.
Yeah.
This could be a mutually beneficial alliance with the Tyrells that her father worked so hard to form, and they've already saved the Lannisters once in the Battle of the Blackwater.
Right.
So,
yeah, it feels like she is fighting a war that nobody else is fighting. You know, it's one person war against the Tyrells, and if the Tyrells knew the level of her animosity, I think they'd be staggered. They'd be like, "What did we do?"
Right. Yeah, she mentions that Grand Maester Pycelle was another place where they butted heads, is her wanting to pull a Master-at-Arms for the Red Keep from Dorne, and he said, "No, don't do that. You're going to offend the Tyrells." And she said, "That's why I'm doing it." Just needlessly picking fights. So, but before we move off the ship topic, one of the ships is called Lord Tywin, and she likes this fact because she likes the idea of Lord Tywin being referred to as a she.
Yes.
And there's another ship called Sweet Cersei that is complete with a figurehead in her likeness, in mail and a lion head helm and a spear. And, you know, knowing how much she hates not being strong and trained to fight like a man, she surely is probably loving this idea of her being portrayed this way.
So there's a horrible scene in the square before the Sept. The bones of the dead Septors and Septons are piled up around the statue of Baelor the Blessed. Waist high. I wasn't clear if it was to the waist of the statue or to the waist of people.
I'm not sure. It wasn't clear. You're right.
I would assume you mean the statue. And the statue, certainly in the TV show, the statue was a lot bigger than a person. So that's a lot of bones.
Right. Well, you know, about those, Brienne and her companions came across sparrows headed for King's Landing with a
Carrying-
wagon of such bones.
Yeah.
And just speaking of that real quick, we discussed in the spoilers of that episode that the leader of that band that Brienne and company met very much fits the description of the new High Septon, and a lot of people think they're one and the same.
Interesting. The sparrows are quite interesting about what they say because she basically offers them revenge because that's the way Cersei works. Lannister always pays their debts, apart from the debts that don't work in the Lannisters' favors. What we really mean by our words is that Lannisters always get revenge.
Right.
But the sparrows don't want revenge. They want protection. They want the religious houses and the religious people to be protected. And it's interesting. It's kind of like an orchestrated plan because she's hearing that out in the street from the hoi polloi. And when she goes inside, she's going to get the same message from the new High Septon.
Right. I had the same thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she tries to blame Stannis and the Northmen for the brutality in the Riverlands, and first of all, Stannis is completely uninvolved in the any of the fighting in the Riverlands.
Yeah.
Now, some of the Northmen have partaken for sure. The Karstarks come to mind.
Yeah.
And Roose Bolton instructed some destruction in the Riverlands himself. But let's face it, the primary culprits are the Mountains men, who are Westermen, and the Bloody Mummers, who were brought to Westeros by Tywin. So, not quite fair to place blame on everyone but the Lannister faction. But that's what she was going to say. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So Cersei thinks that Tywin would chase these sparrows out of this area here with 100 gold cloaks or ride over them. And I started wondering, if Tywin hadn't died, how would he have handled this influx of sparrows to the city?
Oh, please, sir, please.
Yes, you in front.
Not the way Cersei thinks. because he's ruthless, but he's not an idiot.
Right. Yes.
And
agreed.
riding over them with 100 gold cloaks is bonkers.
Yeah. First and foremost, he would not have removed the previous High Septon, which, appointed by Tyrion or not, was a known Lannister man.
Right.
I mean, Tywin had already bribed that man with that beautiful crown that the new High Septon has sold.
Right.
So that's the first thing he would have done differently.
I mean, honestly, I don't think he would have cared about it very much. I mean, again, Cersei's focus is way too narrow for the job at hand,
Yes.
She's got to unite the Seven Kingdoms. And
yeah, he certainly would have handled things differently. First of all, he would not be turning friends into foes.
Correct.
And, probably got an earlier start on handling the situation than her earlier philosophy of that's the Faith's job to sort out.
Right. The new High Septon shows that he's earnest about his vows. He sold the trappings, as you mentioned, the crown and all the jewels. I will say it's almost pedantry, but who could buy the kinds of jewels that the Faith would have?
I wondered that. I wondered who's buying that crown and those robes.
And he's down on his hands and knees with the rest of them cleaning the floor, and he doesn't flinch from speaking truth to power. When he
doesn't.
Tells her that the plaza, which is befouled by the sparrows, was befouled by the murder of Ned Stark, and I flinched when he said it on his behalf.
He also twice mentions that when she blames Stannis and the Northmen, he says, and the Lions. We've been hearing a lot of reports of the Lions as well. So yeah, he's not afraid to speak the truth to her, at least his version of it.
Yeah. He's an interesting development. I mean, from the fact that Cersei is schlepping to beg him to bless Tommen, suggests that he is interested in flexing his muscles a little bit, to demonstrate his power. But then, in the negotiation, he acquiesces so quickly that either he doesn't know what she's doing or she doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah. I think, and I'm pretty sure you agree, that Cersei thinks she's manipulating him, but in reality, he's doing a masterful job of setting up to get what he wanted.
I will say, on the surface, it's the deal of the century. I mean, that right. I mean, as an afterthought, she wipes out 1 million gold dragons in debt.
Yes.
But he got what he wanted there. He got what he wanted
Absolutely.
for sure, which is the going back on Maegor's rule. You see, you know what she's doing? She's misunderstanding what Maegor was doing.
That's exactly what she's doing.
She's not the first. So basically, she's rearming the Faith. And again, let's just mention one more time. The Faith don't like sin. And she's got a doozy hiding in her closet.
Yes, she does.
Mm-hmm.
And one sitting, well, not being allowed to sit on the Iron Throne, but someday will be sitting on the Iron Throne. Yeah, he sets the stage, the Faith brutally harassed throughout the realm with no help from the Iron Throne. The Iron Throne can't have knights everywhere. The crown is heavily in debt to us. And, oh yeah, and I can't jump to conclusions and support Tommen because there's other kings I have to consider. I mean, he sets it up really well.
Yeah.
And he even took advantage of the timing to reverse the law with the war raging and them having men in short supply to begin with.
Right.
And then he got her to actually propose the idea first.
Yes.
She says, well, your sparrows have weapons. Let them use them. And then he dangles what she wants back at her, that if you return the swords and stars, all the kingdom will know of as Tommen as the true and rightful king.
Uh-huh.
So
yeah, she gets the 3 things she wanted, which is Tommen blessed, the sparrows dispersed because they're going to go off with their newfound swords and clean up the kingdom, and the 1 million debt cleared. I mean, that you can see why she's celebrating. You really can.
Oh yeah. If you look at it just from the surface, you think, oh goodness, all I did was allow them to take care of themselves and not, an unburdening of our own issues.
But you just said the key words for Cersei. If you look at the surface, and that's what she keeps doing.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So they're known for. So she kind of describes to Taena she explains what the Faith Militant were like before they were outlawed. They're known for fervent hatred of enemies of the faith, which, great. Stannis and R'hllor definitely fit the bill.
Nice.
Same with Euron Greyjoy and the Drowned God.
True.
But we'll see in background, as we've been saying multiple times in this episode, one big beef that they had with the Targaryens was incestual relationships.
Yes, indeed.
Ring a bell to anybody?
Indeed, yeah.
So 300 years of law undone. And over the years, there have been many good kings that have ruled and kept the law in place. A law created by Maegor. Aegon V was a man of the people. He didn't abolish it. Jaehaerys the Conciliator, who was Maegor's successor, he's the one that finally put the law into place. So she might want to first have examined the law and the possible side effects of removing it before she just agreed to do so.
Yeah.
Maybe take that. I'm going to go back and discuss it. No, she's never going to do that. She was never going to do that.
Yes. I'll take that one under advisement with my incredibly small council.
The smallest of councils.
Exactly. So they meet back up with Margaery on the way back, and there's a few good... Cersei and Margaery have quite good jousting. And the best line is Cersei's here when she says, "No, Margaery, I never thought of your rival in any way."
In any way, right.
Bravo, Cersei.
And we mentioned in the summary that she is so annoyed that Margaery would have Tommen interacting with and supporting the small folk. Oh no. What a terrible monster Margaery is. All she ever sees from Margaery is her trying to steal Tommen away from Cersei. When another way she could, look at it is this young married couple developing a bond. Maybe Margaery is trying to include Tommen in activities that will help them develop some sort of bond and relationship.
I'm thinking that you would be a king like Baelor the Blessed. That's kind of
Not enough
naive.
Yeah,
People
right.
pulling fast ones all the time.
Speaking of fast ones, Cersei comes awfully close to nailing the truth with the Tyrell conspiracy that she comes up with here at the end of the chapter.
Go on.
When she thinks that the Tyrells bribed the guard, and that's how Rugen got the gold coin from the Reach, to free Tyrion after he killed Joffrey, and then had both Tyrion and Sansa whisked away to Highgarden. So the implication is that the Tyrells were in it with Tyrion to kill Joffrey. Well, we know Tyrion is innocent, but we also know that Olenna Tyrell was in it with Littlefinger to kill Joffrey, or at least Peter Baelish heavily implied that that was the fact.
Yeah.
And then Littlefinger was the one that whisked Sansa away, so
Yeah.
she wasn't all that far off from the truth.
But then that's interesting, actually. I wonder why she hasn't thought to send people to Highgarden to see if she can't ferret out Sansa and Tyrion. They're both in the wind now, and she would like them back, heads on spikes. And actually, it's a pretty good place to find them, because you're absolutely right. If the Tyrells were involved in Joffrey's death and Tyrion's escape, then the natural place to hide them would be Highgarden, potentially.
Yeah, you're right. Send
your spies.
Some loyalists. Yeah, send some spies and see what you can dig up.
Yeah. So she does look like she's going to try and spring a trap whereby she accuses Margaery of incest. And it's...
The laugh and the promise feel like the wheels of that plan turning.
Once again, she needs to...
Dangerous.
Yeah, a long spoon on that one.
Yes.
All right, so now we're going to move to some spoilers, which are all Mackelly's this week, because he's much better at spoilers than I am. Join us at the higher tiers of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainers, and you can get the spoiler section. All right, thank you. Those are great spoilers. How about some background?
All right, well, the High Septon tells us of Maegor misunderstanding the Faith Militant and outlawing any member of the Faith from taking up arms.
Not the first, won't be the last.
That's right. Well, Cersei explains that there were two branches of the Faith Militant. There were the warriors' sons. They were knights who swore themselves to the High Septon. Their sigil was a rainbow sword on black, and they were dubbed the Swords. They were led by a grand captain who was elected by members of the organization. The Poor Fellows were the other branch. They were a much larger group, but also much less elite. The Poor Fellows were made up mostly of small folk. They wore a red 7-pointed star badge as kind of a nod to the Andals during their invasion of Westeros, when Andal warriors would carve a 7-pointed star into their chests. Just a much less painful version of it, I guess. Just a little badge. They were called, obviously, the Stars. So together, the Faith Militant was made up of the Swords and the Stars. The Faith first truly rose up against the Targaryens when Maegor wed his second wife, Alice Haraway, without divorcing his first wife, Cerise Hightower. King Aenys tried to smooth things over by exiling Maegor. However, matters became worse when Aenys then wed his son to his daughter, Aegon and Rhaena, respectively. The High Septon called Aenys King Abomination, and eventually most of the realm actually supported the Faith, even though Aenys was previously a pretty popular king. Aenys became ill and died soon after learning that his children Aegon and Rhaena were besieged by thousands of poor fellows at Crakehall. Cue Maegor's re-emergence into Westeros after his brother died, and several battles were fought between Maegor's forces and the Faith Militant, all victories for Maegor and his mother Visenya because of, well, dragons.
Dragons can trump faith, I assume.
Yeah, it seems like it. One such battle, if we want to call it that, was the burning of the Sept of Remembrance, the base of operations for the warriors' sons on the Hill of Rhaenys, by Maegor and Balerion. Hundreds of Faith Militant were killed. Meanwhile, Maegor kept taking more wives, and the Faith continued to condemn his behavior. That was when Maegor created the law that no member of the Faith could carry arms. Now, a new High Septon was eventually chosen, and that High Septon was more lenient and actually anointed Maegor. However, even the High Septon couldn't stop the rebellion. Ultimately, it took Maegor's death on the Iron Throne and his successor Jaehaerys to negotiate a peace with the Faith, proclaiming that the crown would always protect the Faith, which is something that the High Septon told Cersei here in this chapter. The Faith also agreed to accept the Targaryen incestuous marriage practices and the doctrine of exceptionalism.
Excellent. Thank you.
But you notice I said the Targaryens, not the Lannisters.
The Lannisters, yes.
Right.
Good point, good distinction to make. Comparison with the television show, the new High Septon is played by Jonathan Pryce. If there was a clue that he was to become a character, it's being cast as an A-list actor. I mean, British A-list, like most people.
Right. I do know what you mean, though. Sometimes you see what looks like possibly a bit character, and you think, that actor is way too famous for this just to be a small bit.
So often with the show Law and Order, it's like, wait, that person's quite famous. Okay, I know who did it.
Right.
So the deviation here is quite profound. The previous High Septon is dragged from a brothel by sparrows and abused. He then runs to Cersei demanding protection and justice. She seeks out the faithful man who we're talking about here, who is dubbed the High Sparrow. He's not the High Septon at the time. They call him the High Sparrow.
Right.
In a litter, but alone, protected, so no Taena, she doesn't exist, protected by Meryn Trant. The High Sparrow is serving food to the poor, sort of like, sort of, again, the same kind of, he's living the actual life he's preaching. Cersei, tells him, the High Sparrow, that the High Septon wants him, the High Sparrow, executed. He looks troubled, thinking that maybe that's why she's here. She said that instead she's had the High Septon arrested, thinking she can work with this guy as the new High Septon. So she actually gets this guy appointed. In the next scene between the two, the High Sparrow has indeed been elevated to the High Septon, but it is Cersei who does all the driving of rearming the Faith Militant. He's really just a passenger. So she's way more the author of her own demise here.
Yes, she sure is.
Pedantry Corner, nothing really. Anything from you?
No, nothing that stuck out to me worth noting.
All right, news and notes.
Well, this is weird George Martin news, and I'm not really sure. You'll see. I things kind of get weird here at the end. But George Martin wrote in his blog on August 30th about a festival in Santa Fe called Fiesta that took place recently, which includes the burning of a large wooden man called Zozobra. The burning is supposed to represent letting go of all the pain, grief, and disappointment from the past year. I bring this up because Martin mentioned his own battles with such issues throughout the past year. One specific example he mentioned is all that's gone wrong with House of the Dragon, which is weird. He promised to write about it in a future blog post. Now here things get really odd, because today he posted... There was a blog post about the butterfly effect, and he talked about the blood and cheese retelling in House of the Dragon compared to Fire and Blood. That's the two men that
killed the child, killed Aegon's son.
Yes. But then the post disappeared. So our friends, I saw it, I first was alerted to it by our friends Elio and Linda. They tweeted about it. Right. And so I clicked on the link and I saw it and I skimmed over it and there was a picture of a butterfly. And I thought, oh, okay, this is the follow-up to what I was originally planning on mentioning. So I'll read this at a later time here today. I went back to it and it was gone. And I've been checking all day and it's just an error. The page, when you pull that page up, it's just, you get a 404 error. So I don't know what's going on with that. Maybe the link broke or something and he'll get it fixed, or maybe he had a change of heart. But I will say this, according to Westeros.com, which is also Ilio and Linda, apparently at Bubonicon a few weeks back, he questioned himself for caring how shows retell his story after he sold them the rights, and he thought he probably would be happier if he didn't. So I think what's coming is some of his unhappiness about how House of the Dragon is telling his story. But we'll find out if ever that page gets reposted.
Yeah.
Maybe by next week this will be all sorted out.
So House of the Dragon is fresh in my mind, but of course Fire and Blood, it's been a while since I've read it. I've read it a couple of times, but it's been a while. I didn't see anything wildly different, but I guess that the nature is he's saying it's a butterfly effect. They missed something that's going to have repercussions down the line, but it was too small for me to notice.
One thing I brought up on the Discord server after that episode that we were discussing on there was Helena's reaction. She is in hysterics in Fire and Blood when it happens, but in the show she was much more kind of in shock and matter of fact about it. And well, I don't want to go any further about what butterfly effect that has later on.
Interesting.
But maybe that's one of the things he's going to mention. I'm not sure, really. I hope to find out.
I thought the whole Helena thing I thought was an interesting sort of acting and directing decision, the way she acted the whole way through. Because essentially she acted sort of autistic.
Yes.
All the way through.
Right. I agree.
And so her reaction wasn't surprising. Her reaction of sort of shock and not hysteria were kind of what I would have expected from her, given the way she'd acted throughout.
Right.
So
whenever George, if he ever updates, I will next week hopefully clarify where all this was meant to go.
I think he's got other things to write about.
Yes, he does.
We got a review on Apple Podcasts USA from Greenfire, Great GOT Podcast. This is the only podcast I listen to weekly, year after year. As a Game of Thrones fan, I appreciate how well Simon and Mackelly summarize the chapters, plus they add quality analysis and background info. Someday I will read the books and then listen again to all 250 plus GOH episodes, but for now I'm thrilled to be immersed in the world through Simon and Mackelly's most excellent podcasting. Oh, and they sometimes make me laugh out loud over some bit of nonsense. Glad I happened upon your podcast, guys. Thank you, Greenfire. Well, thank you, Greenfire. That is very, very nice. That's where we're pitching this, right? Decent summary, researched analysis, best we can, and some laughs at something stupid. That
sums us up pretty well.
That's what we're going for.
If we were advertising, we might just say that exact thing. That's what you're going to get. Well, thank you, Greenfire. Thank you so much. Wonderful review.
Let's conclude this one. So Cersei is still believing in people she can't truly vouch for, Taena and the Kettle Blacks in particular.
Yep.
But her trap for Margaery Tyrell is gaining some momentum, but it's not yet sprung. She doesn't yet have direct evidence of any infidelity.
Yeah, it seems like, based on the last line of the chapter...
You know what that means.
That she's planning to claim incest between Margaery and Loras. But as you've pointed out, this is a very dangerous path. They say those that live in glass houses don't throw stones. Well, those who are in incestuous relationships probably should not be
mention
pointing that
incest
out.
ever.
Right. Yes.
I'm very curious to see where Grand Maester Pycelle goes from here because I feel I perhaps need to give him a bit more leeway. Perhaps he is the new Varys.
Yeah. Maybe. Like I said earlier, he's by far the longest tenured member of the smallest council right now.
Yeah,
and
he must be like, it's not the smallest council because of me. I was on the big ones.
He doesn't have much beard to rip hair out of anymore, but if he did, he would be ripping it out over just the decisions that are being made. So, maybe he's spending time with Margaery thinking maybe I can educate her and she will be a better queen.
Not a very high bar, but yes, I can see where you're going with that. And Cersei's getting the deal of a lifetime from the new High Septon. But he doesn't care about money, so that does make you think, what does he care about?
Right.
The one thing he got from that deal was the rearming of the Faith, and as you mentioned in background, when they're armed, they can often be quite belligerent. Yeah,
and the warrior sons are knights. They have a group of actual knights. It's not just the poor fellows. It's not just going to be these sparrows running around with cudgels and staffs and stuff. They very well might get actual knights. And there's already a shortage. Like I said earlier, there's already a shortage of high-quality fighting men in the realm right now that haven't been killed or on the other side of the war.
In Cersei's mind, she's perhaps hoping that this could actually bring some stability and law and order to the realm, having these guys out there.
Yeah, I get her initial thought. It's, let them take care of themselves. I've got enough to worry about. If they want to run around and protect themselves,
but they might actually sort of stop the lawlessness that is pretty rife.
True. Yeah, you're right.
Not that she cares particularly about that.
Yeah, but, he was quick to jump to this agreement. So
he was. And his thoughts were echoed on the way in, and that's the bit that makes you think that this was a whole scheme going on.
An orchestrated plan.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, next week we have a chapter called The Reaver, and I always get excited when we have an unnamed chapter or someone we don't know who it is, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, it's... I guess I won't say who it is then, but we'll get to see how can I say this without telling you who it is. It's a good chapter. Just tune in next week.
It's going to be a Greyjoy of some sort, I think.
Yes, it is. You're right.
Yeah,
yes,
that's
yes.
But there's plenty it could be, so let's leave it at that for now.
Yeah, we'll get to see how the new King of the Iron Islands is... how it's going with him so far.
I'm flinching like I am when people speak truth to Cersei.
Yes, you did.
All right, there's 3 ways that you could help us. You could leave us a positive review like Greenfire did. You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal. There you can join us at any of the various sustainer levels. There's a tier to match your budget and interest, and the upper tiers get you the spoiler section. Or you can just make a donation directly to our cause at our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, well, one way you can do it now is you can send us a text. Just click the link at the top of any of our episode show notes. But if you're looking for ways to keep up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, you can check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.